All right, we're still staying on the BRICS summit and, what it does mean for Nigeria, or what Nigeria should be doing at this time. Dr. Ebule just talked about Nigeria trying to balance it so we're not seen to just be hobnobbing with the Western partners, but also the non-Western partners. Let's find out what Chief Consultant of B. Adedipe Associates Limited, Dr. Biodun Adedipe, let's find out his own perspective on this. Dr. Adedipe, good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning, Ini. I'm happy to be with you this morning.
Good to have you, sir. So, is it possible for Nigeria and other African countries to win itself off the dollar?
Very good question. Now, I will put it in context that where we are today is the outcome of history. And it's always good to put things in that perspective. BRICS evolved 25 years ago, and that was based on an econometric projection of what the world economy, the global economy will look like in the first 50 years of this new millennium. So the idea was that by year 2050, the BRICS economies would have become so important that it cannot be ignored. So the question now is, over that course of time, in fact, the first 4 years of that period, 2001 to 2004, we saw the stock markets of the original BRICS, which were just four. That was before South Africa was brought in. Now, their stock markets grew by between 240% and about over 600, about 623% over that period of 4 years. So the interest now was that, hey, if what Goldman Sachs projected in its econometric model played out this way with the four countries, how would this evolve by the time we get to year 2050? So now, on the back of that, that was what led to Nigeria's Vision 2020. People don't remember that. So right from the beginning, in fact, I would say since 2005, the BRICS had been of interest to Nigeria. All right. Now, October 2024, Nigeria became a partner country. And that was after 4 African countries had been established as members, or rather 3 of them, South Africa, Egypt, and of course, Ethiopia, became full members of BRICS. So if you look at that, what it now means is that if we consider our position as Nigeria, are we still going to be talking about the grammar of what we knew in the 1970s as the non-alignment movement then, or be talking today about our own national interest, which is to say, like, Ayo said earlier on, Nigeria must first and foremost consider her own interest before we talk about balancing relationships. So which means it is the best we get in terms of offer that Nigeria should pick up from the table. It's an interdependent world. And so we must also realize this. We need the world needs us. And that applies to every country around the world. Even the largest economy in the world, the US economy, is the reality of the life today. So in my own thinking, there is a good opportunity for Nigeria to also take interest and be involved in what is happening with BRICS.
But get involved how? Because then you have President Trump's threats hanging down the throat of any country that's involved.
Well, for me, President Trump's threats is not new. Okay? Number one was that he said all these things when he was campaigning for that office. And then when he won the election, became sworn in as the president of the United States of America, he also announced it, and I'm going to slap tariffs on every country around the world. If at that time he said minimum is 10%, every country in the world. But when he came out with it, of course, we saw discriminations here and there. And ultimately, we got to a point where he now said, okay, like I mentioned earlier on, he backtracked a little. And I said, okay, I will go the way of bilateral discussion and negotiation of the tariffs, which is what they have been doing. Now, for him, he thinks the BRICS should become more important. Of course, today, the BRICS account for 39% of global GDP. That may appear insignificant to some analysts, but that is a big deal. If you look at the number of countries involved, 11 of them accounting for 39% of global GDP. That's somewhat significant. Now, the other side is the population of the world. What percentage do they account for? Almost 50%. All right. So that makes them important. So all that I see Trump trying to do now is to break the ranks. So let me bring forth these threats. And so for a country like Nigeria, who are not full members, but partner countries by designation, maybe that would make them draw back a little. But of course, like I said earlier on, it is about our interest and then the direction of trade. So every country, therefore, will look back and say, how do we respond to this? He did the same thing for the US, for example, because it's driving now de-globalization in the sense that American companies that are doing business in the rest of the world, he now also mandated them that they will prefer they produce their products within the US territory. So he is pursuing American interest, and that shouldn't make us also abandon our interest. And that is why, in my own view, Nigeria is not in any, so to say, risk that cannot be managed.
That's an interesting way to capture it. I didn't I was hoping, you would go one way or the other, but I mean, I think you have diplomatically captured it to say Nigeria is not in any risk that cannot be managed. So whichever way we want to go, we can manage it.
Correct, exactly. That's just the way it is. And that's the essence of strategy, like Ayo said.
Okay, so we see BRICS saying, AU, African Union, promising that they are going to come, as a bloc with one front, and they have in front of them the AFCFTA. Internally, as Africa, we are still struggling with AFCFTA. We know that, even though we seem to have a lot of conversations these days. I mean, you talk of the issue of documentation and all of that. Yesterday, I spoke with a guest, and he still brought that up. So how successful, or how can we make this successful, coming out as a bloc and selling AFCFTA amidst BRICS and amidst the global trade uncertainty?
Yeah, fantastic question for me. Now, if you look at the trade agreement, African Continental Free Trade Agreement, what it says essentially is that let's look at other regions of the world, okay? 6 of them. When you look at the intra-regional trade taking place in most the other regions of the world, perhaps only for Oceania is where the volume of trade is a little lower than that of intra-Africa. So we have a very good case to pursue after, but also put in context here that after became operational in January 2021, so between then and now, we've counted 4 years plus, about 4.5 years. The question is, how have we gone between January 21 and end of June 25? So clearly, Africa is going in the right direction. And the only way to deepen that is for us to come together and speak with one voice in relating with the rest of the world on the one hand, and also build trust and confidence that enables us to trade more with one another. That means that the borderless Africa we are talking about within must become a reality that every government in the AU in Africa we want to pursue vigorously. And the whole idea is that if you don't fight for your own, an outsider cannot come to fight on your behalf. So for me, therefore, the critical element, and this is the last thing I will say about this question, the critical element is those conditions and terms of engagement between African countries. We must ensure they are African in nature, not a hand-down or something we copy from other regions. And that is what I've learned in my professional experience. That when you invite people extra Africa to come set terms and conditions for how you relate to each other, definitely it can be your best interest. So that is an area we need to work on to ensure that we build that trust and confidence within and among ourselves.
It does sound like we still have some internal work to do on AFCFTA before we can confidently present it, or use it as a negotiating instrument, whether it's to the
That's
US
right.
or to BRICS.
That's right. That's my view and opinion. Just similar to what we have been talking about in ECOWAS in the last 50 years. The terms and conditions of forming that bloc were set by extra-African institutions. I will put it at that without naming any particular one. So you then find that it's been difficult for West African countries to meet those terms and conditions. So the bloc has remained a dream in the last 50 years. So the same thing we apply to AU, which is must look inwards and build that trust among ourselves so that we can have one strong voice in negotiating with the rest of the world, no matter the bloc we are talking about, whether Western or BRICS or whichever.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Biodun Adedipe, Chief Consultant, B. Adedipe Associates Limited. Thank you for your time and views this morning.
It's always a pleasure conversing with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we head to the commodity space with Halima. She's here in the studio. Please stay with us.